The biggest banks in the United States had to testify before the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee to answer some questions about why it is that their lending is down, specifically lending to small businesses and to ordinary Americans. I love the fact that they're holding hearings on this, and I will address that portion of the issue in just a moment. But what came out of these hearings was an exchange with Senator Elizabeth Warren and Jamie Dimon, who of course is the head of Chase Bank. Now, what they were talking about was just how much money Chase made in 2020 with overdraft fees. Because you would think, during a pandemic when people are really struggling, maybe waive overdraft fees, maybe be a decent person, decent company that understands the hardship that so many Americans are facing. But I'm not stupid. I know that morality, ethics, all of that doesn't play a role in a corporate machine like JPMorgan Chase. And so this exchange was fantastic. Take a look at the first video.
Mr. Dimon, how much did JPMorgan collect in overdraft fees from their consumers in 2020?
Well, I think your numbers are totally inaccurate, but we'll have to sit down privately and go through that.
These are public numbers.
And I also want to point out we did not overdraft.
Can you just answer my question? How much did JPMorgan collect?
We did not overdraft at the Fed account. And at any request,
so you never. I'm sorry, Mr. Dimon. That was Mr. Dimon. That was not the question. Did you had an automatic protection? So I'm asking. You were recommended, the regulators recommended you offer that same kind of protection to your customers. How much, in fact, did JPMorgan collect in overdraft fees from their customers in 2020? Do you know the number?
I don't know the number in front of me, but
I actually have the number in front of me. It's $1.463 billion. That's nearly $1.5 billion that you collected from your customers.
There was one line in there that you might have missed, but I think is important. And it was when Elizabeth Warren mentioned recommendations from regulators. Private companies aren't interested in recommendations from regulators. Regulators are supposed to regulate, not dole out recommendations. So if there is no regulation preventing Chase Bank or any other bank from charging overdraft fees during the pandemic, they're going to charge overdraft fees during the pandemic, and that's exactly what Chase did, to the tune of nearly $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. Let's watch more of this exchange.
Now, do you know how much JPMorgan's profit would have been in 2020 if you had followed the recommendation of the regulators and waived overdraft fees to help struggling consumers? In other words, without that overdraft money, would your bank have been in financial trouble?
We waived the fees for customers upon request if they were under stress because of COVID.
I appreciate that you want to duck this question. Do you know how much your profits would have been if you'd actually waived all the fees as the regulators recommended?
We waived the fees every time.
The answer is your profits would have been $27.6 billion. I did the math for you.
So even if JPMorgan Chase decided that they were going to waive the overdraft fees, they were good. They made a lot of money in 2020. In fact, so much money that recently Jamie Dimon said that they're doing corporate stock buybacks. We're doing real well. We're gonna enrich ourselves. Of course, they didn't even need to charge the overdraft fees to make an insane profit. They still made the profit, but they gotta get a little more, right? Doesn't matter if you're a struggling American, doesn't matter if you're dealing with a pandemic, doesn't matter that they get all sorts of goodies just for being a big bank. Goodies like, not having to deal with any prosecution for collapsing the global economy in 2008, not having to deal with the nickel and diming that we deal with in Congress. I mean, the Federal Reserve prints out money and hands it over to them because they need liquidity, guys. They need liquidity. I mean, they get all these tax breaks that we don't get. But it doesn't matter, they always want more, which is why that line, recommendations from regulators, makes me want to pull my hair out. Recommendations from what recommendations? What is the point of regulators if all they do is recommendations? You're supposed to regulate. Of course they're gonna want more. The whole point in this system that we're living under with private industry is for said private industries to maximize profits. It is their only goal. There is no discussion about morality. There is no thought about ethics. There is no thought about how their practices are negatively harming others. It is a machine and its only goal is to maximize profits. And if they can get a little more, which for them is $1.5 billion through charging overdraft fees, they're gonna do it. They don't care about your recommendations. Final video for you.
So here's the thing, you and your colleagues come in today to talk about how you stepped up and took care of customers during the pandemic, and it's a bunch of baloney. In fact, it's about $4 billion worth of baloney, but you can fix that right now. Mr. Dimon, will you commit right now to refund the $1.5 billion you took from consumers during the pandemic?
No.
Right now?
No.
No.
That's right. Senator Warren, no. I mean, I don't believe that she's actually surprised by his answer. He's telling you bluntly, but more importantly, he's telling the American people, no, I want that $1.5 billion. Now let's kind of discuss the whole point of the hearing in the first place. Because the hearing is about the fact that these big banks, not just Chase, other banks, Wells Fargo is included. You had Goldman Sachs as part of this hearing. Like all these big banks are part of this, right? And the whole point of the hearing was, hey, the Treasury handed you some money so you guys can, inject some cash into the economy during this awful pandemic. The Federal Reserve also prints money, gives it to you for cheap. You're supposed to lend it out to small businesses and to ordinary Americans. But you guys haven't been doing that. What's up with that? Let me give you those details. According to data from the Federal Reserve, from April of 2020 through April of this year, commercial loan issuance from America's 25 largest banks declined by 12.5%, while consumer loan issuance has declined by nearly 1%. 0.8% over the same period on a seasonally adjusted basis. I don't know if any of you tried to even refinance your home loan, your home mortgage during the pandemic. It was the most challenging thing I've had to go through. They just didn't want to do it. I had to go to multiple lenders to make it happen. Everyone's talking about low interest rates. Oh, low interest rates, that's not for you and me. Low interest rates are for people who are already in positions of power, people who already have established businesses. Low interest rates, if you fight really hard and you are persistent, maybe you get to take advantage of that. But getting a loan from these big banks has been incredibly difficult. This is something that I've heard Nomi Prinz talk about quite a bit. In fact, when it comes to QE, something I've discussed on this show, she is, in my opinion, the top expert on that matter. And QE is what I'm referring to when I talk about the Federal Reserve offering liquidity to these big banks under the assumption that the big banks will then turn around and provide money, loans to people who need it. But they haven't been doing that. What have they been doing with that money? Well, let's remind you all about, first off, what the Federal Reserve has been doing exactly. I want to make sure we get the details right on that, and how that has increased corporate stock buybacks among some of these big banks. So the Federal Reserve's balance sheet ballooned following their March 15th, 2020 announcement to carry out quantitative easing, that's QE, to increase the liquidity of US banks It reached $7.81 trillion as of May 5th, 2021. This measure was taken to increase the money supply and stimulate economic growth in the wake of the damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. But just a few weeks ago, we learned that these banks started to increase their corporate stock buybacks. They really ramped it up. Take a look at this fun little graph, which shows you how much corporate stock buybacks have increased in 2021. And obviously, we're not even halfway through the year yet. And when it came to the companies and why they're doing this, why would they do corporate stock buybacks? Well, for companies, share buybacks can be an enticing alternative to dividends when it comes to returning capital to shareholders, really the only point of capitalism. They reduce outstanding shares, which helps to boost earnings per share. Everything is about the shareholders. And when it comes to Jamie Dimon specifically, if you want to know what he's doing with the money, Jamie Dimon, chief executive of JPMorgan, whose board gave the green light to a $30 billion buyback program in December, said last month his bank was, quote, buying back stock because our cup runneth over, end quote. Taking money from the Fed, they're not loaning it out to people who need it, including small businesses that Republicans claim they care so much about. And they're just making themselves wealthier, guys. That's what they do. And when Jamie Dimon's feet are held to the fire by the likes of Senator Warren with fantastic line of questions, he has the courage, the confidence to tell you, the American people, that he's gonna keep charging you overdraft fees even as you're struggling from a pandemic, and he is not gonna give you that money back. Capitalism, it's so delicious, isn't it?
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.